So just before the video starts, I wanted to give a quick shout out to what is quite possibly the most apt sponsorship I've ever come across for Vivec. Oftentimes I'll decline, 99.9% of sponsorship deals I come across because I just don't think Raid Shadow Legends is very appropriate for the sort of content on this channel. But I know a lot of you like to fall asleep to these report videos, and that's why I thought these COZYSNUG sleep earbuds from LYTMI really are a match made in heaven for this channel and its viewers. If you're anything like me, you might struggle falling to sleep on your back with conventional earbuds in. I'd always wondered whether there were any designs that facilitated side sleeping without waking up with a perforated eardrum. Not only do these earbuds work wonders for side sleepers, they boast high quality audio, are super lightweight and soft with various different sizes of ear wings to pick and choose from, on top of having 21 hours of charge when using the charging case. So, now you can all quickly and smoothly fall asleep listening to me recount the usual litany of mind-bending, reality-shattering experiences that we all know and love. If you're interested, please check out the link in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code Vivec for 10% off your order, valid up until the 9th of December. Anyway, we'll crack on with the video now, but be sure to let me know what you thought of the earbuds if you do end up snatching yourself a pair, and thank you to LYTMI for reaching out, I really appreciate it. Overwhelmingly terrifying. An LSD and Changa trip report by Sinister, posted at EARBUDS.org December 6, 2021. An overwhelmingly terrifying experience. This trip report consists of 2 DMT experiences, both while under the influence of LSD. It is the latter DMT experience which is of most interest. You may skip ahead to it if you like, but I feel it is important to provide the necessary context, especially as both DMT experiences were completely unlike any other DMT trip I'd had. I consider myself an experienced psychedelic user, having taken countless LSD experiences over the course of approximately a decade, as well as being a semi-regular user of DMT, although usually at sub-breakthrough doses, with only some limited and mild full breakthrough experiences. The LSD come up. So today in the early afternoon, I was well rested in my own home, and decided to take 330 micrograms of LSD, my usual go-to dose. The purpose of my trip was to relax, listen to some music, de-stress and contemplate some things that had been on my mind. The first part of my trip was uneventful. I came up quickly, I enjoyed dancing around my kitchen with some music in my ears. My mood was exceptionally high. I felt fantastic, to be honest. At about 2 hours in, I was tripping very hard and in the peak of the LSD experience, and I sat down to do some meditation. Instantly, I was transported to a familiar headspace. I started feeling a sense of connectedness with the world, and I started seeing some very familiar closed-eye visuals that I often associate with this meditative state. Part of the tapestry on my wall started glowing bright as I focused on the centre of it, and I felt little shreds of my ego being picked away, as I so often enjoy when meditating on psychedelics, and my body felt a little bit lighter for each shred that was removed. First DMT experience. I had the sense that I was ready for more, and I wanted to try again for that elusive DMT breakthrough, which I'd been trying hard to achieve for years. I loaded up the bong with 100 milligrams of 50% Changa and took it all in 2 hits. Now, I will say, if anyone else had been describing this to me, or if I'd been reading my own experience elsewhere, I would doubt the legitimacy of it. Even as I type it now, it sounds so bizarre. But I can assure you I am trying to be as accurate as possible. I am not exaggerating for effect. I was relatively disappointed that when I opened my eyes after the second hit that I was still in my room. However, my disappointment did not last for long, as the centre of the tapestry on my wall, which I had been focused on before smoking the hit, became even brighter, extraordinarily so. This bright light grew bigger and formed 4 corners, and essentially a portion of my wall was replaced by this pure white rectangle which had space behind it, as if it was a door to an entirely white room. I promptly felt my body be pulled towards the light, and I was consumed by it. My perspective changed, and I became aware of my own body now floating in this white room, and I was looking down on my body. Each part of me started to detach and split off. I saw my legs detach, one by one, and then my arms, and they floated away into the nothingness until they were fully gone. Eventually, all that was left was my skull, with no torso, and I saw my head split open and my brain slide out. I could see the fine details of the tissue on my brain, and it looked healthily pink. I then watched my brain split in half down the middle, and each part of my brain went flying off into different directions. I was consumed by whiteness for a few moments longer, and then eventually I was spat back out onto my sofa with crazily intense visuals filling the room. I was absolutely floored by how real this all was. I still had my sense of self. I knew I'd taken DMT and LSD, but there I was, quite literally watching parts of my body float away in full high-definition vision, as if it was the most ordinary thing ever, the same as going to the shop to buy some milk. I felt pleasant throughout the whole experience, and I was never scared or afraid when I was in the White Room. Once I calmed down a bit from the DMT haze, I became very reflective and intensely in awe of the experience I just had. I've seen lots of things in my head before, but never had I seen clear as day such a blatant disregard for reality. It made no sense to me that I could view myself having my limbs torn off and a brain split open. But it did just happen. I saw it with my own two eyes, and it was clear as anything else I had ever seen in my life. I sat for approximately 2 hours trying to make sense of this all, while still tripping on LSD, and I considered it an extremely profound experience, and one that was unknown to me. I finally managed to distract myself from the experience for a couple of hours, got myself some food, and watched some TV. About 4 hours after the initial experience with DMT, and about 6 hours after I took the LSD, I felt fully recovered and recharged from my DMT trip. I still felt in a very positive mind state. I was very intrigued to know more about what I had just experienced. Was that a breakthrough? And I decided that I would take another round of DMT. Second DMT experience. I meditated for a while beforehand, and then loaded up 100 milligrams of Changa into the bong and managed to take it all in one hit. This is where it all went very wrong. As I was doing a long, slow inhale, I was watching the cherry of the Changa in the bowl of the bong glow red. I recall this red glow getting brighter and brighter and consuming more of my field of vision as I inhaled. This was already a more intense visual effect than what I was usually used to when smoking Changa, and I had a good idea that I was in for a heavy ride, placing the bong down. The next memory I have is finding myself in a completely white room again. There was just intense whiteness all over, with intricate patterns that looked vaguely like clocks floating through the air like ticker tape. I immediately felt an intense panic and fear. Fear like I've never felt before. I had no idea who I was, where I was, or what was happening whatsoever. Information was coming at me from all angles. The visuals were intense, although I cannot remember the exact nature of them. My mind was totally overwhelmed, and I just wanted it all to stop. But I was too confused to even know that I'd even taken DMT in the first place. I just did not remember taking it. I could not form any thoughts or do anything other than be completely subject to the experience unfolding in front of me. The fear was absolutely overwhelming. It was the most intense emotion I've ever experienced, and I was utterly terrified. I kept looking around trying to find a way out of this white room, and at one point a door appeared, but then was snatched away from me when I got nearer to it. I turned around, looking for another door, which then would disappear again, and this kept on happening over and over again. As soon as I got close to a door, it would just vanish. Something was mocking me. I felt trapped. Someone had captured me. Had I actually gone insane? I eventually became familiar with the thought that I had taken DMT and I'd broken through, but this just induced even more panic. I'd already been trapped in this white room for far, far longer than a typical DMT experience lasts. I could have sworn that I'd been trapped for many hours. I began to accept that I was trapped here forever. There was no way out. I'd sent myself into psychosis. I was never going to come down. I even started to accept that I would never see life again. I'd never see anyone I knew again, and that this was just it. I was going to die here, in this horrible white room. The sheer horror of all of this was quite unimaginable. I can still feel the panic now as I write this. I've never experienced anything like it or even close to it. It was deeply traumatic. Eventually I became aware of my own body again, but was not allowed to move it. and I watched my perspective rapidly flip around my body in 360 degrees of vision, with images of myself folding over on top of each other. My visual perspective was changing so fast that I could barely even register the changes. It was deeply disorientating, like spinning round very fast in a merry-go-round. First, I'd be seeing out of my eyes, then I would be looking down on myself. Then I would see several copies of myself side by side, as if I'd grown several more pairs of eyes and could see through them all concurrently. At one point, my perspective flew down into my hand, and then back up out of my torso, stuck in a loop, spinning between different parts of my body like a washing machine. At some point, I was back in my body, but still confused. I did not know who me was yet, and I was subjected to a series of painful hallucinations of my teeth snapping in half. I quite literally felt them break off in my mouth, and I placed my fingers into my mouth and could feel that there were teeth missing. Of course, my teeth were fine when I sobered up. Still in the white room, but now in my body, I sat down on the floor, admitting defeat. I would sit here until I died, however long that may be. I hope it's soon. I'd honestly just had enough. Eventually I started to feel like I was in a vaguely familiar place. Details slowly shifted in from the white light, and I realised I was somewhere I knew and recognised. It took another minute or two before I realised who I was, and I was sat in my living room floor. Curiously, I had started the experience sitting on my sofa, and I have no idea how I came to be sat on my floor. Presumably I had moved around during the experience, but of course, I have no memory of this at all. I sat there for almost 30 minutes without moving. The residual DMT effects felt like they took forever to wear off. I just wanted to be sober again. I felt like every visual was mocking me. I'd been utterly humiliated by this substance. I wanted it gone. I wanted it out of my body, right this instant. I wanted what had just happened to have never happened. In that very moment, I was totally broken. Writing this now, several hours later, I feel okay-ish, but still deeply confused and quite shocked by what has happened to me. I really did honestly think that I knew what I was doing. I thought I could handle it. Obviously, I was woefully unprepared. How can one even prepare for such a thing? I have been training for years to achieve ego death, and yet when I did, it was an awful experience for me. The worst I have ever had. I was absolutely floored by the power of the DMT experience. I had done, in my mind, absolutely everything I could to be ready for it, but was not even close to enough.